our fingers and hope for the best.
No, but your videos are very well done.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say. Yeah, okay. Oh, actually, I think we may be live on that note.
Oh,
I know I shouldn't be surprised. It catches me off guard every single time. It's like you spin one of those wheels, like the wheel of fortune, and sometimes it'll work straight away, and sometimes you'll have to wait for like 10 minutes, and I have to click a bunch of buttons, and it's pretty messy. So anyway, welcome to everybody on YouTube chat there. I see we have a few familiar faces: Ben Toth, Matthew O'Regan, Conrad Roman, Jessidiah, the Partisan, Ian McShay. How are you getting on? Good to see you all there today. Today we have some fantastic guests with us. We have Brazilian Left Front, we have Juliana and Rodrigo. Comrades, would you like to introduce yourself and say hello to our lovely audience that we have here?
yeah. So yeah, I'm Juliana. I'm from the Brazilian Left Front since 2016. But I wasn't from the start, but I joined in the beginning during the first mobilizations against the coup in Brazil. And since there, we have been doing some things that we can talk better
Yeah,
along this chat.
yeah,
And
definitely.
Rodrigo,
Yeah, I'm Rodrigo. I'm also in the Brazilian Left Front, I think, since 2000, the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. Yeah, I joined during the protests and the occupations on Take Back the City. So it
Mm.
was mainly because of the housing situation, and BLF was doing this link with the housing groups. So yeah, that's how I joined there, and
Yeah,
I've been working there.
brilliant. Yeah, that's really exciting. And it's going to be cool to hear a little bit more about the situation with housing, maybe a little bit about Take Back the City and what happened there. I suppose I imagine both of you were sort of in Dublin at this time. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be really interesting to hear about this as we move into it. I'm not sure if either of you would like to talk a little bit about your backgrounds, maybe about your political development and sort of how that brought you towards this particular organization. Would either of you like to talk about that a little bit?
um,
How you sort of came to the left
yeah.
after all
Uh,
this time?
okay, we have different paths. Mine is not that exciting. My parents were Marxists, so it was pretty much something easy way to go. So
Amazing.
I understand the world through this frame.
Mm,
And I studied journalism in Brazil, and I studied social science, and now I. So when I arrived to Ireland, didn't have too many things to connect with
mm,
among the Brazilians. I arrived in 2014. So when I saw that there was a group organizing around this anti-coup
mm,
issue, I started getting involved. It was a, a very broadly people like with different political backgrounds that got together. So it was a huge challenge to be in the group, but at the same time, it was like a group that was concerned with political issues and was still in the left. So I started getting involved,
mm.
and nowadays it's good enough that we have this more Marxist analysis and more critical of capitalism and its limitations.
Mm, mm. Brilliant.
And and Rodrigo has a more cathartic experience.
Um,
Looking forward to hearing this now.
oh, not very much. Is well, my family is also a left-wing family, not Marxist, not, but they were supporter of the PT, the Workers' Party in Brazil.
Mm,
So industrial workers and working class people. So
mm,
and unionized and organizing in our town. So I grew up with the during the 90s with the expansion of the Workers' Party and the campaigns of Lula and other Workers' Party candidates in the local constituencies.
Mm.
So I had this contact as a child. Yeah, and I became very religious when I was a teenager, and I went to live in a Franciscan convent, and I
Wow.
had the contact with the yeah, I had some contact with the work in the field with the like with homeless people, and uh, I left this because of the well, I wasn't in agreement with the vision of poverty as a static thing, like can't be changed. So
Mm.
when I left, I started to look at poverty with different eyes. I went to college and I did politics, international relations in Brazil.
Mm.
That's when I kind of developed a better, or I started to develop a better understanding and of political issues, oppression, capitalism, and all this.
Mm.
So we had in 2013 we had the protests in Brazil with the transport fares, and I got involved with that, and that was my first kind of like active political involvement, I think. And
Mm.
when I moved to Ireland, the same as Juliana, I didn't know about BLF. That's another challenge that we have, that like trying to reach out and get uh, uh, well know
Y-
us, like present ourselves, and
Mm.
spread the word about the group.
Mm.
So when I heard about BLF, I got involved, and yeah, I think I developed a lot of uh, more understanding, and still developing that while I'm involved with the group.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's great to hear, and it's really interesting that you both came from these sort of these left wing backgrounds, and sort of you've ended up here. That's exciting, because obviously we know the history of Brazil was quite hostile to the left. I mean, obviously, like basically there was a dictatorship from like the 60s to the mid 80s and so on and so forth. So and I know that sort of PT and communists and anarchists and socialists were militantly fighting against this dictatorship and so on and so forth. So it's cool to hear that the left is living on, and I think maybe at the end of the conversation we can return to talking a little bit about the current situation in Brazil. I know it's of course quite difficult again for the left at the moment under Jair Bolsonaro. So I think that's going to be really interesting to discuss later on as well. And I think we'll talk a little bit about the foundation of Brazilian Left Front as well, sort of where that came from, and all that sort of good stuff as we go on throughout the conversation. But yeah, thank you very much for introducing yourself. That's really, really interesting. I'm sure I'm not no doubt that the people in the audience are relating to this. I do see a few of my friends, my Brazilian friends who are checking this out now in the chat. So to the Brazilians who are living in Ireland in the chat, please hook up with Brazilian Left Front. Little shout out to the group there, and get involved. Don't be afraid. So let's jump into it. Let's get started. Let's start by talking about life in Ireland for the Brazilian community, and we can talk about this from a few different angles. But firstly, what is the situation like with regard to housing? So I'm not sure who would like to start that, Juliana or Hotigo. Would either of you like to take that to get things started?
And start now.
Yeah, great.
No, you want to start? You can start.
Okay, yeah, I can. Yeah, I thought you say you're going to. Sorry. Well, yeah, the situation with housing in the Brazilian community is a situation where we are like very vulnerable. I think there is an extra layer of vulnerability for the Brazilian community, as for the migrant community in general.
Mm.
Issues with the language, so exploitation is access to information and all that. So it gets, let's say, easy for landlords and landowner and homeowners to exploit the people. This like even people living in overcrowded conditions, they wouldn't know their rights and wouldn't have also the support and the, um, uh, the how, very much how to engage in a I could make a good collective action and defense. So, and also as Brazilians, as like culturally, as you said, very hostile to the left. Sometimes people are not very willing to bring these problems to some kind of reaction or protest or or collectivizing this. So yeah, the situation with housing is bad. Like and with the people sometimes are afraid of asking for the landlords for maintenance because they are afraid of getting evicted if they keep asking too much. Uh, you have people sharing rooms with 4 or 5 other people. You can get to the extreme of people sharing an accommodation with 20 others.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
So I think that happens a lot is that the landlord will stop doing maintenance,
Yeah.
and then when the house is overcrowded and uh, there is no livable conditions, they just evict people in 24 hours.
Yeah.
There are other situations where uh, the landlords they use somebody to sublet the house, so the contract is in the name of somebody. Nobody know who the landlord is, and this person just overcrowds the property, and then the landlord just pretend he didn't know and evicts everybody. So it's a lot. It's very vulnerable. It's very expensive, so people can only work 20 hours a week. It's very hard to afford. That's the. I think that's an overview of the situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if Juliana wants to add something there.
Please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's difficult to. The situation is pretty bad with an average. Yeah, the average of people is like sharing the room with like 3 people, 2 people, bunk beds, all this kind of things that everybody knows and everybody talks about. But we found it difficult to organize uh, and to mobilize people to this kind of situations and to talk with the landlord or I don't accept some kind of situations because of different issues. Mainly, I believe is this transitional understanding of the situation. Do you think that's temporary? That you are in this situation for a moment because you're just studying and after you're going to get a better job or you're going to come back from Brazil, so you're not going to be in this situation too long. So there is this perspective, so that's like it's okay, it's temporary. What if we look at our Irish youth, our currents in the that are Irish and like are 30 years old and still living with the parents because of the housing crisis, we see that's not that easy.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not only because we are migrants that the situation's bad. It is like it's bad for everybody. It is a housing crisis. It's not just a crisis, it's like also a project. But anyway, so but we have the particularity of this specific thing that we believe that's transitory because we are not, our visa doesn't allow us to be here for too long, and also the visa issue because if we have our visa is stamp 2, so it's not that doesn't give us too many rights, as Rodrigo said, of working and getting like better jobs and these kind of things. So we need to go for the lower prices, and also the issue of if you don't have a visa, you don't have how to complain. And just one thing that we can see that it's pretty much a feeling that many people share is the lack of trust in the institutions. So you don't feel that like if you complain to the guard or to RTB, it's going to change something. And this is, I think, that it is a feeling, and this lack of trust in governments and institutions has been bring us in Brazil to horrible situations that we will talk further. But this is still a feeling that's there, and this lack of trust as well in mobilization and the power of people doing things together. It's a thing that, as you said, with the dictatorship, all these kind of things, people movements, left organizations have been beaten so hard in Brazil, all kind of attempt to respond to abuses of the system. You find like a massive resistance, like a really violent reaction. So there is all this kind of things, and and all the political situation that has been showing that we thought that we are advancing to one direction, and when we see we are coming back like 10,000 steps. So I think there is all this kind of things there.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned that. I was teaching from sort of about 2015, 2016 to 2019, just sort of to the end of last year, and I did notice as the years went on, I did start to notice a growing hostility towards the left amongst the people that I was talking to. So like around the time that Bolsonaro was sort of coming to power, I started to notice that a lot of students were sort of like just openly like calling people like commies and like all the time, like no matter if you said like something even slightly not even left wing, like liberal, you know, they would just be like communist, and it was very strange to see, because when I sort of started out 2015, 2016, and people seemed, maybe it's an illusion, maybe this is just the people that I met, but people seem to be a little bit more open to left-wing ideas and stuff. So it was interesting to see, and it's very sad to hear everything that you're talking about when it comes to housing and stuff like that in Dublin. Especially, you know, you're talking about having like 3, 4, 5 people in a room, and especially at the moment with regard to like COVID-19, there's all of these like restrictions with regard to social distancing and stuff, which are, you know, completely impossible. And it reminded me as well, you know, people were saying, I think Rodrigo, I think you mentioned that people are scared that the landlord will just kick them out and they're being sublet, and so people are just being ridiculously exploited. And this is across the board. This isn't just with housing either. This is with work as well. You know, we mentioned work. You mentioned that people are only able to work legally for about 20 hours per week. Now, unfortunately, as we know, rent is so expensive. Living is so expensive in Dublin that it's basically impossible to live on 20 hours per week. So a lot of people end up working sort of under the table, without contracts, gig economy sort of positions, and so they have no security, which causes a lot of problems. And you mentioned that people don't want to organize collectively, they don't want to sort of get together. There's this hostility towards the left. I think that's going to be relevant now, as we move on from talking about housing into the work, you know. So let's talk about work a little bit as well, you know. So what is the situation like in terms of work for the Brazilian community in Ireland, but also particularly in Dublin, I think?
Yeah, during the pandemic, many people lost their jobs because it's more in the service sector. So the service sector really felt this measures, the lockdown and all, and many people kept working as delivery workers. And we there is a little bit of like shift in understanding the last years, in the past months, that like the situation is not that good. Before, people that was delivering had this feeling that it was okay, it was flexible, always had work and all those kind of things. But it also changed a little bit during the pandemic, when the orders and all those kind of things, they had like less work and more people competing, because many people wasn't working in the restaurants, but they could work as a deliverer. So all these kind of things make they see that the situation wasn't that good and it's not that flexible. It just means flexibility is for the boss, not for you. It means when they need you, you are there. When you're not needed, you are not there. So like this flexibility is not like a choice
100%.
you can make on your own. So this kind of shift is in the mentality of some people you can observe, but yeah, so there is this kind of things that's there, but if we always think about Dublin and this kind of thing, but I think during the pandemic we also saw the meat factors with people keeping working and keep and the massive focus of the COVID that have been a meat plan and meat plants is I think that Brazilians have been working in Ireland for the past 20 years that I know, like really with the immigration of Brazilians to work in Cork and Galway. So there is like many people that went to work there and already has families and all because it was in the end of the 90s. And these people went there when they were needed, and again when the meat plant closed there, they didn't have a job and they became undocumented. So like we are necessary for a while, so we are here, we do the services, but at the same time we don't have any kind of really rights because our visa can expire at any moment and we became undocumented, and when we became undocumented it seems that you are just like uh, yeah.
Disposable. Yeah.
Disposable, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really it's awful. I actually I you know you mentioned that you wrote an article, and I was reading an article that you wrote, and one of the things that you mentioned as well in it, I believe if I'm not mistaken, was that there can be an issue with hyper visibility when it comes to organizing and trying to solve these problems with migrants, because we know that GNIB can sort of see people as targets. They see, okay, they're organizing, they're out, they're loud, they're on the streets, protesting and stuff like that. So this can be another barrier, I think, as well to actually organizing and getting organized. And yeah, so that can be another huge problem, which I think is important to address when it comes to trying to solve these problems. But yeah, unfortunately, this, I suppose, idea of people being disposable is cooked into the system or baked into it. You know, it's inbuilt, which is a huge problem. I'm sorry I cut you off there, Rodrigo. Do you wanna jump in and talk a little bit about work?
Um,
Want to add one thing about this is not it's not it doesn't mean that people are aware that they are being treated like someone who can be the disposal, like it's so naturalized this kind of business is so like business as usual and the capitalism that like you you just like you don't see yourself being treated that much like shit,
Yeah.
as if we had a little bit more of self-esteem, what capitalism doesn't give to us.
Yep.
We would be pretty much angry about it.
Yeah.
Rodrigo, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a strong one. This thing of the working being allowed only for 20 hours a week, it's also ridiculous because we all know it's impossible to live under like minimum wage working only 20 hours a week,
Yeah.
and affording housing in Dublin and everything else. So it's an instrument of power as well that the employers can hold on the workers, because they usually give you more hours to work, but it's all your responsibility if anybody cuts you. Uh, well, people accept that because they cannot say no to their boss. Just, oh, I need you to work like 5 more hours this week, and they say they wouldn't, just say no.
Yeah.
And also because it's, as I said, it's impossible to afford living in Dublin, working only 20 hours. And those hours can be cut off anytime as well. And you can go under 20 hours. You can work 15 hours a week if your boss just decided it. So a lot of the contracts are very flexible. I got a phone call today, a friend of mine saying that the her boss keeps making jokes about her sexuality in work, and she's not comfortable with that. So she called him to have a chat about it, and she said, "Okay, I don't like those jokes. I'd like you to stop it." And he was very angry, and she was frightened. She called me because she was afraid that next week he will only give her 10 hours a week.
Jeez.
because he usually does that if he gets upset with something.
So fucked up.
So that's the kind of like, that's just an illustration of the kind of experiences that you go through when you have these precarious conditions that are usually attached to your work, uh, to your visa conditions, and it's a systematic thing. So the you know the law makes it possible for the oppression to perpetuate.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Well, I've heard so many stories like that as well. Just even from my students and stuff like that. They'll come in crying. They come in crying like on a Monday morning after having similar experiences like this. And yeah, it's just it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to hear about how widespread, how much this permeates society. Um, yeah, and as you said, it's a systemic issue. And I also thought it was really interesting the points that are being made. We talked about this flexibility in massive quotation marks, because as Juliana said, it's flexibility for whom? Flexibility for the bosses. Always flexibility for the bosses. As you said, they can take away your hours and they can use that to exploit people to ridiculous levels. They cut down your hours, if they don't like you, if you don't smile and say yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, big smile, happy faces, etc., etc., don't jump, then they cut down your hours and they have so much power over everyone, because the rents are so high, because life's so unaffordable, and yeah, as I said, there's all these kinds of problems. And of course, it's extremely dangerous as well. It's one thing, I suppose, if you're working in a restaurant, we probably do need to just do a quick moment to acknowledge that unfortunately, under circumstances working for companies like Deliveroo and stuff like that, it's actually very unsafe, as we saw unfortunately with Tiago Cortez, who died after being hit by a car in a hit and run, just a couple of months ago. I believe that the people who hit him were teenagers, some teenagers out joyriding in a car or something like that, and I think that they've just been arrested, maybe in the last week or two. But I think that was a really heavy, intense, and sad moment for the Brazilian community. Would either of you like to talk on that a little bit, and maybe whether that was kind of how that was, I suppose, received by people in the Brazilian community and people working these kinds of precarious positions?
Yeah, I think it was in 2018. Now I don't remember if it was end of 2018 or 19 that the delivery workers did a protest,
Mm.
that about when a video was released when they are beaten up by teenagers, and it was loads of teenagers in Dame Street and loads of delivery work, and they were fighting and all, when it called the attention of loads of Irish people and became like something big.
Mm.
And the Brazilian deliverers decided to organize a protest about the violence, and the protest was protest against xenophobia and racism. And at the end, and it was a massive discussion if it was a protest against violence or against racism or xenophobia, because Irish people start saying that they also suffer violence. And one thing that we were trying to think, but that's a very specific kind of violence that the Brazilian workers are exposed to.
Mm.
When we are on the streets, and it's since I arrived here, when I came, the first thing that I was told was like, if you go there, people are going to throw eggs on you. And you, as an English teacher, you might know this.
Yeah.
There's this story of people throwing eggs on you. It's like in the city center, in the neighborhood.
Eggs,
It's pretty.
apples.
It's pretty like daily.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't happen to everyone. That's pretty much a thing that like inside the Brazilian community, everybody talk. It might happen, but like so there, and the things that people are told, like it's pretty much regarding of where they come from, and it's like come back to our country and
Yeah.
other kind of things. So there is this aspect of like racism in this kind of violence. In this specific one of Thiago, unfortunately, we don't know if We just know that it was like really sad and it got too much together. People who was already tired of being treated like shit or being exposed and have their bodies so vulnerable, like to all kind of violence, that people got together in this massive demonstration. But at the same time, the main vibe was just a solidarity without political connections, without reflecting what it really means.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't want to politicize a situation that's like sad and tragic, but it is also political because it is like a person who was working and someone just went through. And but we want to do a debate about this situation, the exposure of the workers, the responsibility of the company that just didn't have any responsibility because, again, you know, you were free to make your own hours, and you were you know, and they don't have any kind of formal responsibility to the worker. But it is a thing that we'd like to debate, and it was good that the Debian workers went to the march, but at the same time, many people was like, it's not something political, it's just like a person who was dead and we needed this time to mourn like this person, you know. So it's a very complex situation, I think, for yeah, so we have total solidarity with the family and all, but we really think that we need to talk about what happened and understand what it represents and start organizing better in the working place to have rights and then not end up in a situation that, again, the Brazilian community needs to get together to do a fundraising to be able to send the body to Brazil or wherever, you know. We always among ourselves organizing ourselves, want to like the powers who has the money to do stuff is never doing, it's always absent. It's pretty much okay to show that they are not useful, but at the same time they're not replaced, so they're still there and we are still doing like what should be something that shouldn't be doing in an individual level.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I can definitely imagine people saying, no, like, don't politicize this, don't politicize, because it is such a heartbreaking moment, and people are very emotionally charged, you know. But it
Yeah,
is, as you say, it's a political issue as well. So yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for talking on all those subjects. I know that's kind of a heavy topic. Let's jump into education now as well, because I think this is an interesting point with regard to the Brazilian community in Ireland. Many Brazilians find themselves trapped in a system of predatory English language schools. So, could you please tell us a bit about the issues with this aspect of Brazilian life in Ireland?
Okay. Yeah, well, it's the system of a like it's a recruiting system, is it basically. They sell those courses, and people get here expecting some level of support, and the English schools are only after profit after all.
Yep.
So we could see it very clearly during the COVID-19, the beginning of the pandemic. So the schools basically abandoned everybody to their own luck, moving classes to online, and well, everything links together, like people living in overcrowded accommodations and having to watch the classes or participate and not getting any refund for that. We know people wouldn't, like, if you want to buy an online course, you stay, like, you don't need to pay 1,000 or 2,000 euro for that. So um, the, the the level of support is always very bad. I had an experience here when the school I used to study just stopped like selling the course, and they told me that I could ask for a refund or just do a general English course. At the time, you could do a FITAC course, and you could still have a visa, and then the government just banned these. And so I was on a FITAC course. They told me, okay, you have to move to a general English course. Well, I didn't want to go to a general English, so I said, okay, I just wanted my refund. I will go to another school and try to get a like IELTS or something like that. So at this time, I had to wait for 1 month until they processed my refund application. And after 1 month, when I came back, they communicated to the GNIB that I was missing class and I was just banned from the school. It was like they canceled my enrollment. So they sent a communication to GNIB to cancel my visa as well.
Yeah.
So I lost 2,000 euro in this situation. Yeah, those practical situations I think help us think like and illustrate how vulnerable you are. You can't really do anything about these kind of things. I was lucky to kind of get some things worked out with the immigration to go and do a college a course at level 7, kind of like progressing in education kind of thing. So they would renew my visa. But yeah, usually it's not much you can do. A lot of people went back to Brazil because they were here and they didn't have the PPS and they wouldn't avail of the COVID-19 support. So they went back and they asked for refund and they didn't get it. So a lot of people come to Ireland because it's easier. You can work, and when you're in Brazil, you kind of think that's the best option because you're allowed to work, and the English courses are a little bit cheaper than in other places in other countries. Um, but a lot of people, I would even dare to say that most of the people I know are not wealthy people, so they save a lot or they use some kind of indemnization. When you get fired in Brazil, you get some kind of compensation, so they use this to come here. So it's the savings of the whole life of people when they just lose it with the schools here.
It's yeah, and you know, it's also the schools as well are incentivized to drop people out, because when they drop people out, that gives them more space to get more people in, which means more money for them, you know, and they know that people won't realistically follow up and get their money back. They won't get refunded or any of these things. The whole system's so messed up, and even like within the schools, it's like there are these microtransactions where you think you've paid for everything when you go in, then they'll make you pay for like for books, they'll make you pay to change courses, excuse me, to like change if you want to go from like morning to afternoon or afternoon to morning. If you want to like shift your schedule, you have to pay for that. So there's just so many of these little traps that people will fall into within this system. And as you said, it's all about money. Like it's all about money. And I can say that from a teacher's perspective as well, and seeing the process of how they hire teachers as well. It's they basically don't test the teachers at all. Like anyone can go in there and I remember, and I'm not saying what school I worked with, obviously for legal reasons, but literally, I remember like one of my first days being told that just go in and entertain them for like 3 hours. Just go in and entertain them for 3 hours. So can
Yeah.
you imagine? That's it. Like that's it. They just want someone to like supervise people, to look after them, make sure they don't do anything bad or whatever. Like it's not about actually learning English or anything at all. So like it's a total scam, you know?
Yeah, you can feel that that you never know what you're going to expect.
Yeah.
It's up, if you are lucky, you get a teacher that can teach you something. If you are not, like in the first class that I had when I arrived, it was a teacher, pretty nice. If I met him in the pub, it could be fun. But like he was playing guitar in the class and singing,
Yeah.
and no,
Very
like
common.
that was it. And we should sing with him, but I just couldn't understand what he was saying, and it wasn't that fun because it was pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so you would have a teacher that's just chatting, and you need to be chatting about things that you're not even interested. But anyway, you need to be there, and yeah, and sometimes you have someone that's going to give a little bit of grammar and some kind of foundations. And as I don't have this, after
Yep.
6 years, I'm still talking the way it comes.
Oh, it's so crazy. Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's really unbelievable. There's no regulation of what the teachers should teach and what they're like forced to teach. It's only if you do something like as a teacher, if you did something like really that upsets the students, then the students might complain about you or something like that. But if the students are happy with what you're doing, then like that's literally it. So like that could be they're happy because you're not doing any work. You're not doing grammar. You're just maybe some people like I don't know people liked singing or whatever it might be or but it's literally there's no oversight whatsoever. It's all just about money. It's all just about getting money out of people, and of course the teachers are pretty like relatively low paid, and they know that if anything goes wrong with a teacher, they just fire them. Teachers usually don't have contracts. It's very precarious for the teachers as well, and yeah, so it's just this horrific situation that everybody finds themselves in, So yeah, and another thing as well, which we haven't mentioned is that these schools, these English language schools, I know Rodrigo, you mentioned a little bit earlier on. You talked about how they sort of leave students basically without a school as a result of COVID-19. Students are doing their courses online. They can't go to class. People aren't really sure what's happening with lockdown, but it was a big issue a couple of years ago where schools would just close down. They would shut down, so the owners of schools, the directors of schools would literally be raking in all this money. They'd leave the schools open for a couple of months, and then one day the boss just wouldn't show up, and the school just wouldn't open. And you have all these teachers who have been working for a month or two, haven't gotten paid. You have all these students who pay for full courses, and the school's closed; they can't get in. And this happened with a number of schools between I think 2015, 2018, 2019 as well. So like that's something that could always happen at any moment. Because again, there's no oversight, there's no regulation. And often these students and teachers don't get their money back. They don't get refunded for their work, for their payment, or any of these things. So yeah, there's basically no oversight, and it's it's just a money making machine. The whole English language system is just a
Yeah.
money making machine.
And to the level where people feel like the situation is so bad that people are happy to be able to renew their visas, and although they don't get a refund.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like, like I
yeah,
remember when the schools closed and a lot of people didn't get any refund at all, but they were kind of like, oh, that's fine because at least the government allowed us to renew our visas anyway. So it's yeah, and that's the level of oppression that
yeah.
reach like and the people just happy with whatever they get. Like
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's really messed up. Like, and these courses, as we said, they're expensive. Like people will pay like €2,000 for maybe a 6 month course. I know they used to be a little bit longer. They used to be 9 months. They used to be 12 months a few years back. But it's like €2,000, and you can imagine if your visa lasts for 8 months, you're only working supposedly 20 hours a week. You're paying for rent. You're paying your bills, for food, for everything. How do you get the money to pay for that? And so you can't. So you need to work non-contract jobs. You need to work under the table, as they say, and of course, then this sort of facilitates this under the market economy that's not regulated at all, and gives the bosses so much more power and props up this whole fucked up system that we have here. So yeah, this problem is just there's just so many systemic issues here, and yeah, and sorry, I know this has been very doom and gloom so far. I hope it's not bringing anybody down too much, but this is unfortunately, I think this is the reality which a lot of people don't want to confront. And also, I think okay, the two of you know this obviously, but a lot of people don't. They sort of have a rosy vision, a rosy imagination of what life in Dublin is like for someone coming from Brazil to move here. As you said, it's okay. You work, you go to school, you get your visa, everything's cool, and everything's only transitory. And so if there are problems, it's not a big deal. It'll be okay. And yeah, that sort of masks a lot of the real problems, and I suppose prevents people from organizing and collectively solving these issues. So we talked a little bit about education, we talked about work, we talked about housing as well. But Brazilians are also regularly subject to xenophobia. We talked a little bit about this earlier on as well. They're regularly subject to xenophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination, both individually manifested in personal insults and attacks, and systemically as the housing, employment, and education systems continue to reproduce these unfair and inequitable situations for Brazilians and others in Ireland. So tell us more about the experiences of Brazilians in Ireland with regard to discrimination, broadly with regard to discrimination, not just racism and xenophobia, but across the board. Would either of you like to speak to that a little bit before we move forward?
Yeah, I think there is also a gender issue that Rodrigo mentioned about her friend in the workplace. So there
Yeah.
is also this kind of stereotypes of the Latin America women and these kind of things that we see in the individual relations that are very problematic. This kind of patronizing thing that like, listen, we know how things work here better and so on, and this can be about anything. You might be in a cleaner job and a person's going to say this as if you are like didn't even know how to clean something.
Mm.
So yeah, there is all like this patronizing attitude, this kind of things that people as well has this idea that like Brazilians here are really miserable in Brazil, so they would accept anything. So there is all these like constructions about the identity of the Latin America person and the Brazilian that like make people and make our vulnerability like something like makes more like daily basis this kind
Mm.
of like racism and discriminations,
Mm. Mm.
and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, the majority of people that comes here cleaning and so on has university, had the opportunity to study, work in their field, and all. It's like it is a different thing.
Mm. Mm.
And in this sense as well, that's why people thought that they were like media class or upper class, and when they come here, they realize that they're just working class.
Mm.
They just had a little bit of a better salary in Brazil, but
Yeah. The labor
if you are like,
aristocracy, as they say.
yeah, if you're not working class, you don't be doing what we end up doing here.
Yeah,
No.
I saw that so much. I'd see people who were like lawyers and stuff over, like lawyers and doctors and stuff over in Brazil, and then they come over here and they're just working like normal jobs, in the shops or McDonald's or as cleaner or whatever it might be. And yeah, it was a little bit of a I think a little bit of a strange experience for them. And also, yeah, as you said, there's this incredibly patronizing attitude that some people will have, where it's like people will just assume Irish people. Let's just like put a label on it, because sometimes I think Irish people unfairly get a little bit of a pass when it comes to things like racism and xenophobia for people maybe who are outside the country and don't realize it. But like, there's serious problems in Ireland with like racism, xenophobia, sexism, LGBTQ phobia, and all these sorts of things. But people can be incredibly patronizing, and as you said, it's like, oh, okay, migrant, you're over here, you don't know how, like how to work this mop or how to do something like this, something so basic, and yeah,
In
it's
fact,
it's a huge
we use
problem.
mop in Brazil, so it is like a challenge in the beginning
Yeah.
because you just throw water in everything and wash, or yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big challenge. Maybe yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so this is a big issue. So there's also these other there's kind of there's a creepy side to it as well, especially with regard to like sexism and stuff like that. There's some very predatory behavior as well. I don't know if either of you are part of those like groups. It's like I think it's like Bazookas or something like that in Dublin, and there's like Brazilian women's groups, and they'll often talk about how like there's these Irish guys who will like target them and just be like, "Oh,
Mm.
hello there, Brazilian woman," and then
Yeah.
they'll say like one or two like, "Hello, how are you?" in Portuguese, and like flex their their Portuguese, excuse me, but their compatibility with Brazilians, and like it's I don't know, it's like they'll target people, and they'll use these awful stereotypes, and the second these women are just like, no, fuck off. You weirdo, why are you talking to me? They're like, oh well, you're just a, and then they'll just start, they'll jump right into the sexism and misogyny and just say like really horrific, awful stuff, you know. And again, there's
Yeah.
it's based on these stereotypes as well. As you said, like the like Latin American women, and it's yeah, it's everywhere as well. So these are huge problems, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Um, So before we move on, I know we're gonna talk a little bit more about Brazilian left front and so on. I'm not sure if there's anything else we wanted to say about life in Ireland for the Brazilian community. If there's anything else on the topics we've mentioned before that we haven't quite addressed yet. Did anyone want to say anything, Juliana or Rodrigo?
Mm, no, no, not particularly. I think we can keep
We're
going.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. I am conscious of the time. I know it's been 50 minutes. I said we said this would be like an hour. So we'll push forward with these pretty quickly. So listen, with all these issues that have been highlighted and more, it's no wonder that an organization has emerged to push back against these difficult situations. So tell us about the origins of Brazilian Left Front, how it got started, who started it, what was it in response to, etc., etc. And I know you've sort of referenced this a little bit before, but maybe we can talk a little bit more about it now because I do know that we have a few Brazilian friends in the chat, and now might be a time to recruit new members.
Yeah, we need to do a recruiting training for ourselves. As Rodrigo said, we are not the best. I don't know how to found. Yeah, maybe we should join Brazucas and be more active with some. Yeah, the problem is that they're fake of fake right wing people that like I don't know how they pay their bills, but they are 24 hours. They're able to say some shit.
Yeah.
But a part of this. This is self-criticism. We started in 2016. There were the first demonstration in front of the Brazilian embassy, where people just create some people that was just studying English here create an online event on Facebook and share in these Brazilian groups. And I think around 30 people attended. I didn't attend this first one. A friend of mine was one of that created Mila, and I think I joined it after I don't know 3-5 protests, but it was in this moment against the coup against Dilma Rousseff. The coup happened, so came Temer. We thought that was the worst thing we could ever expected, but after Temer came Bolsonaro. So the group that emerged just to raise awareness about the coup and the current political situation in Brazil as a temporary thing started to we kept going because the situation kept get worse and we had to grow more like awareness and support and this kind of things. But in this process, as the situation of Brazilians living here is also bad, we start to get contacted about eviction of Brazilians happen here and there. So we start to get more involved with housing groups. So we would work more in these two fronts. Yeah, and that's it.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Rodrigo, do you want to say anything else?
No, I think it's yeah, it's very good, well explained. Yeah, we we try to work on like addressing issues happening in Brazil and getting involved with the situation of the Brazilian community here, and also like the reality of oppression with uh, other groups as well, like as a solidarity and getting involved and helping out. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's absolutely great to hear. And yeah, it's cool. It's cool to hear as well. People organizing as well based on housing. You know, you mentioned evictions and stuff like that. I know for a long time there really wasn't any consistent group that was really dealing with evictions and stuff like that. I know that Katu has become pretty big now, and that's pretty exciting to see. But it's great to hear that you guys were already sort of dealing with that beforehand. But do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what activities the Brazilian Left Front is engaging in at the moment, and what are its current areas of interest and struggle?
At the moment, we are mainly answering to things, like responding to things, than like really doing too much.
Mm.
We want to come back with the studying group because as many people comes and go, we think that we needed to invest a little bit more in education. So we had started a Marxist group that we had to do it to our schedules and all this kind of things, working and studying, that we are both, at least both of us are here studying and working.
Mm.
So it was pretty hard. So we are more working in these things, like doing workshops and with different groups here, and trying to really organizing these educationals now. We
Mm.
had along the time we had like some feminist groups that was organizing when some women was here and they left. So we always needed to come back and to see. But now at the moment we are more really responding to things like today this talk and all, and writing and trying to educate ourselves about these issues that have been raised about what like the worker situation, the housing situation, and Rodrigo is pretty much involved in Cato from the beginning. So
Ah,
it's
brilliant.
like it's something that he is particularly bringing to the group to organize. He can talk about it, but like a more Latin
Please.
America thing. Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing about this.
Yeah, we were working together actually in Katu as trying to build a kind of Latin American working group to kind of like to somehow recruit Latin Americans into Katu. And just to give a brief explanation, Katu works organizing locally. So it has a kind of like a geographical mobile, like organizing.
Mm.
Uh, uh, this working group we are building at the moment is trying to address the problem of Latin Americans independent of their geographic location. So we are working on a document in Portuguese and Spanish to inform people about the work of CATU and the importance of collective action, of unionizing at the level of their community lives or outside of work, I mean. So as people can organize in their to defend their interests in around housing and problems in the community. So we're trying to recruit more Latin American members to CATU at the moment. So we know, as we discussed at the beginning, like a huge problem for the migrant community in Ireland is the exploitation around housing. So it's important to be able to be part of some network that can organize together to defend our interests in this matter.
Mm. Mm. Brilliant. Thank you very much. That was really cool to hear and very exciting. I fully recommend that everybody in Ireland, whether or not you're Irish, non-Irish, just go ahead and get involved with CATU, CATU. It's a really exciting new organization. I'm not getting paid to say that, by the way, in case people think I'm a shill or something like that. But do
Nobody.
yeah. So
Funding is not very
imagine.
high yet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe one day we can. No, I'm only messing. But yeah, do check out Katu. It's very interesting. But yeah, back to Brazilian Left Front. Maybe you could tell us who do you think should get involved with Brazilian Left Front, and how can people get involved with the organization?
Well, I think if people agree with what we are saying or don't disagree much,
With any political organization, if you don't disagree much, I think that's the
yeah,
criteria.
that has been the principle from the beginning. If you don't agree much, let's have a chat, and you can drop a message in our Facebook page or on the Instagram. We can meet and yeah, and keep coming, keep contacting and get involved and suggesting things. Because there is also this kind of things that like people expect us to do, think that
Mm.
like in us like as an abstraction, like just something that's like there, but we are like ordinary people doing stuff. So if you have other ordinary people doing stuff, would be like easier. So you can also not only suggest and think, but also putting yourself forward to execute, to do the thing. So yeah, that would be pretty much these, like people who is interested in dedicate a little bit of time and energy to do the things that they want to do and we want to do together.
Mm.
Or at least Rodrigo.
No, I can't. I don't want to add anything. I just second what Juliana said. Yeah, if you don't disagree much with what you're saying and
Amazing.
what you see in your page, it's very important. Like I think if especially Brazilians, of course, um, have some ideas and want to put ideas forward, and also, very importantly, put yourself forward to execute the ideas. It's very 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 welcome.
Mm, brilliant. Yeah, yeah. That's a really really good point as well, because a lot of times people will join an organization and it's always immediately, what is this organization going to do for me? What am I going to get from this straight away? But really, it's about us working together collectively to bring about the kind of change that we want to see. Working together and helping to empower each other to do that. I suppose. For people who do want to check out I think I've got a link to the Facebook and the Instagram just below in the description box below this video. So do go ahead and check that out now if you're able to, and if you want to get involved, and you should get involved. What I will say is Brazilian Left Front is that open to everybody, or is that just for Brazilian community people?
Yeah, Brazilians.
Just for Brazil. Ah, okay, I can't join. Heartbroken now. Okay, well, pack it in, non-Brazilians. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. Still join Katu. We can also hang out there, I guess.
We
You
can.
can share our content on Facebook as well. You can help in a lot of different ways as
We can help out, yeah, from the
yeah,
sidelines. From the sidelines, we can
yeah.
help out. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that. So moving on now. It is over an hour in, and I apologize if I'm keeping you a little bit too long here. Just let me know. Is there like a time limit that either of you have? Do you have like 20 minutes, half an hour? Is that okay to hang on for a little bit more time, or either of
Yeah,
you? It's
Okay.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And if we have a couple of minutes at the end, I'm sure people have a couple of questions. I know there were a couple of questions in the live chat on YouTube that people posed to you, so maybe we can discuss those a little bit afterwards. But yeah, so let's push forward now. So, what are some suggestions for how we can help to improve the quality of life for the Brazilian community in Ireland? So, what advice do you have for Brazilians in Ireland? We do have a few watching at the moment. What advice would you have for our Brazilian friends in Ireland at the moment?
Yeah, it would be around getting organized, if it's in the workplace, if it's like joining an union, if it's joining a housing union, or getting organized in the issues that they are feeling affected by, even migrant groups that would be organizing around the visa issues and this kind of the right of the undocumented. So like join this kind of actions. And yeah, just like get involved. And
Brilliant.
yeah, and I think that's the Cato principle as well. That's very interesting. It's not about and it relates what you said. It's not about going to organization asking what people can do, but how you can do this together. And that's why like you don't expect like this kind of service provision thing,
Hmm.
but it's like put yourself forward to do the things as well.
Hmm. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Do you have any advice for our Brazilian friends in Ireland?
Yeah, I think I agree with Juliana 100%. I think the only thing that we can advise people as a way of improving life is organizing and getting together and yeah, because we can't expect that things will be given to us and with the experience of these oppression for a long time. So it's very important to be able to organize, build a strong network, and address the problems that we. It's affecting all of us. When it's about housing, or work, or living conditions, visa, uh, everything. It's across the board. Everybody is facing these problems, and us as migrants, we face an extra layer of vulnerability in those matters. So it's very important that we organize and we put our our perspective on those problems, so people know and yeah and we can try to find a way out together.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. And secondly, what advice do you have for non-Brazilians in Ireland who want to help out? Maybe for people who, as you said, don't completely disagree and want to help out a little bit. What advice do you have for non-Brazilians to do that?
I think open space and facilitating unions and political parties in the left, sharing how they see migration. Don't share statements that like migrants lower the wages of the national working class. Like these kind of things is very damaging. So yeah, this idea that we are not a threat, but we can work together against the real threats. This is just something that like the Irish left can do.
Mm,
That would be very helpful.
mm,
And
absolutely.
of course, when issues emerge, we know that we can contact for support, and they also can contact us as support if we can collaborate somehow.
Mm, mm,
But these kind of things would be nice to be clear.
mm. Definitely, definitely. It's really important to build up that solidarity coming both ways, which is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Before we take a few questions and answers and stuff like that afterwards, I can't have two very politically aware and politically active people on the stream and not ask a little bit about the current situation in Brazil. So before we wrap things up, could you tell us about the situation in Brazil at the moment under the reactionary Jair Bolsonaro? Anyone want to take that?
Well, yeah. Only yesterday we had a big day in in Bolsonaro's world in Brazil. It's very hard. It's unbelievable sometimes. Everything we have to go through and see happening in the country. Um, yeah, well, I think people are very aware by now of his tendency to be very uh, lunatic and to work with his base very strongly in agitating people to be in denial and reactionary and violent. So yeah, well, it's very important to note that it is an outcome of a political crisis, a political a problem of, I'd say, representativity. People voted historically. People voided their votes historically during the 2018 elections,
Mm,
and that's how he got elected. It wasn't that, the majority of the electorate voted for him, but it's still there is a problem that the middle class in Brazil. He represents a lot of these uh, reaction and this desire of the middle class to to have these kind of this society very divided and uh, block progressive agendas, you know.
Mm.
So we are in a moment of polarization where we have uh, yeah these horrible government in power, and a lot of people feel empowered by his ideas.
Mm.
So it's yeah, it's Juliana might add something to it.
Mm.
About the current situation, Bolsonaro,
Mm.
yeah, it's like it's really the worst nightmare. Um, it says a lot about the way Brazilians deal with their past, with their history. It comes back with how we ended the dictatorship in Brazil, with this kind of okay, now it's gone, so we are not going to prosecute who committed the crimes or being like the people accused by the former dictatorship or the dictators that were like torturing people. So we are going to let everybody go free, anything happen. So we have now loads of people who used to be tortured, like free. And Bolsonaro is one of the supporters, and it's like our recent history, and it's really dramatic. It's like really torture was something that was pretty common until the 80s.
Mm.
Uh, so we have this pretty horrible things still there, and he's saying this kind of things because when he impeached Dilma, this discourse in the Congress was honoring her torture, né? Because the Workers' Party was problematic, but at the same time, Dilma was an active she was active against the dictatorship, and when he was voting for her impeachment, he made honors from the guy who tortured her, Coronel Ustra, who
Oh, I
tortured
remember.
loads of
I heard that. Yeah.
in Brazil. So that's the kind of people that we voted for, with an open discourse like this. But there is these two things happening. So kind of liberals in Brazil would be against this kind of discourse. Liberals in a sense of human rights.
Mm.
So you would have this kind of, they wouldn't agree with this, but at the same time, Bolsonaro has like liberal politics. So it's a very complex thing because at the same time that he's saying this horrible stuff, those of liberals end up preferring him than a leftist alternative.
Mm.
So he won. He won, and it's like really the worst thing because it's the most reactionary. It's the most like violent, homophobic, racist, openly, um, and also it's introducing loads of liberal measures and more privatization and all this kind of shit. So it's like
Mm.
very bad.
Mm. Mm.
The election of he loved Trump. He's very sad at the moment that Trump's not there. We hope that this will also be something that happens in Brazil, that he will lose and it will weaken his power without too much hope because United States is the United States after
Mm.
all.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, hopefully, I do hope that this sort of like a domino effect where it sort of spills over across the world. You know, I do hope that this is signaling the end of these just these radical rightists coming to power. But yeah, let's see how things go anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we had a victory in Chile. In Bolivia, Mas returned to power.
that's right.
Uh, in Chile, they won to change the constitution that was done by Pinochet as well,
Mm.
with all the support of United States. This coup that happened in '73,
Mm.
and so yes, we hope things will change.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they can return back to the like the pink wave. I think that was called beforehand. You know, in Latin America and stuff. But well, let's see.
And
Let's
we can learn from the mistakes as well.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And just on that note, I'm not sure if either of you want to say anything on this, but do you see any clear path forward to help improve the situation in Brazil? Do you have any hopes or any thoughts for where things might go, where things look like they might go, or where you hope things will be?
it's a bit scary at the moment because we just saw this week that two candidates, Moro, né, that was a judge in the case of Lula, that did orchestrate and play this like hero role in this in his prison, that opened the way to Bolsonaro. He's going to support to work together with a TV show presenter that's like a millionaire in Brazil, and they might run as a new face, as heroes, and they are totally liberal. So the problem is when something so bad happen, all other things doesn't look so bad. And once we don't have really an alternative, because there is so many issues that we are still trying to struggle with, of this ghost of communism, of ghost, as you said in the beginning, that everything that's minimal, like should be like basic human thing, it's a leftist thing. So we have loads of things to overcome until be a concrete alternative. We will be dealing with this kind of alternatives that is like the less worse, that's like Biden US. And might be these guys in Brazil as well. So that's bad, because in the end of the day, like capitalism keeps doing, this damage things to people, and not only materially but also subjectively. That's why we end up in this situation that we cannot discern what's fake and what's not. So people questioning if the earth is flat in the 12th and 21st century. So loads of this kind of things came up. So we just see the misery that we are in. We still need to talk. We need to discuss this kind of things, So I don't see like a huge change, but I'm optimistic when I see the growth of like radical left in Brazil. I think the Communist Party have been growing a lot, at least in the media. And
Is that, can I ask, is that the PCB or PCDB? I know there's the two. PCB.
Yeah.
That's the,
Yeah.
I think that's the one that everybody prefers. Maybe I'm wrong.
The traditional one. The other is the one that emerged from the split. But so there is young people very interested in this kind of ideas. Loads of like YouTubers like yourself here in Ireland, in Brazil, like really putting these issues forward, and they are getting great popularity, and they are in the mainstream media now talking about even the PSOL. So these ideas are out there, because I think it's a moment that everybody, that the right wing radicalized. So it's the time from the left to radicalize as well, and stop with class conciliation and understand what the moment is asking for. But for this, we need people support, because we are not the right wing that can just impose our own will.
Absolutely brilliant. And that was really cool analysis as well, when you're talking about sort of like these lesser of evils. I mean, when it comes to these elections, it often becomes a case of you're kind of voting for the right or left wing of capitalism. Like, you don't really have a real alternative, and so I suppose this is where the more radical alternatives do come into it, where PCB and other actual communists and socialists and anarchists do come in. I know you mentioned PSOL as well, or PSOL as well. So I think that I'm looking forward to seeing the growth of these things as well in the future. So listen, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Are you okay with taking just a couple more Q&A, question and answer style questions at the moment, and then we'll wrap things up? Does that sound okay with both of you?
Yeah, it's crazy thing, this chat, but yeah, try to.
Don't worry, I'm not going to take like every question or anything like that. There's one or two, and well, there's one that was actually asked at the start, which I think was a pretty interesting question, which I'd be very interested to hear both of your thoughts on this, kind of related to Bolos, Bulos, and stuff like that. I'm probably mispronouncing that name completely, but Bulos, this guy Bulos. Well, anyway, actually, it might be a different organization, but I'll ask the question, and you can see what you think. So, Trimel asks, thoughts on MST, the Brazilian landless farmers movement. Do you have any thoughts on that movement? MST.
Yeah, they have I think it's a really important organization. Unfortunately, it end up relying too much in the power of the institution, like the government. Then when the Works Party went to power, it became a little bit like dependent on the moves that the government was doing. So it was something like, wait, we are dealing with these things institutionally. So the Works Party was with all this class conciliation, and MST lost a little bit of this strength in doing occupations and pushing forward the demarcations and like this kind of stuff. So yeah, it is something that was missing, but at the same time, MST grow and is establishing itself in the production of food for the Brazilians, in fairness, because 70% of the food that we eat comes from the family agriculture. That's what MST produce. So the food comes from this. The rest is from the agribusiness that just export and damages the environment and provoke agrarian conflict with indigenous communities, quilombola, and rural people, workers. So there is I believe that Hemi State's historical relevant is still very important. They are in this, they organize themselves as well in cooperatives and are involved in this solidarity economy trade, and they are very relevant. I just hope this kind of more radical actions can come back.
Yeah, this is kind of a problem with a lot of more like radical organizations. As they grow larger and larger, they end up sort of moving more towards the center, then not quite as radical as they were before. And unfortunately, we see this all across the board. We're seeing this right now with organizations in Ireland as well, even like Sinn Féin or something like that. You know, a party that would have been quite radical in like the 70s and the 80s, but is now pretty much just, well, milquetoast centre left social democracy. But yeah, anyway, this is unfortunately a huge problem that we need to deal with. We need to keep on pushing to keep these organizations on the right track. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rodrigo, or will we push on?
Yeah, no, I think the same. I think it's a very like apart from all that, I think it's a very important movement and offers a very good idea of socialization, and it provides food and education for people in terms of production of food and working with the land. So yeah, so there are all those problems, but yeah, they still very important model in this matter. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that interesting insight on the onto the issue. Thank you very much. We have another one here, which actually is dealing with Bolos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, so excuse me on that. But Joshua, excuse me, Joshua Y asks, do you think the victory of Bolos in São Paulo will be a big punch in Bolsonaro's government? I don't know much about this. Do you know much about this? Bolos in São Paulo, maybe running for office or something like that at the moment. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Guilherme Boulos, he's from PSOL and he's in the second now, but the difference is quite huge. But we are hoping he goes to the second turn, and at least the way he grew, it was very important. São Paulo, it's a very conservative city. It's always like the right, the rich liberals in power and all these kind of things. So it's good that he's been seen, even though and his campaign is interesting because it's more online, not as well. It shows that the left is because much of the right-wing campaign relied on the WhatsApp, this kind of media. The left are using as well this kind of media to grow, and and he comes from the I'm trying to translate in my head MTST, the movement of the
Oh
homeless people,
yeah, MTST. Yeah. I know
the
them.
times as well, and yeah, would be good to see him there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, about the winning of Guilherme Boulos being a punch in Bolsonaro, I think actually these municipal elections will be very important for us to have an idea of how society is dealing with all that is happening at the moment in Brazil. I'm not sure if it will be something that will really somehow make the Bolsonaro government less strong, or will hit it very strongly. It can be, it cannot be, but it will be a good thermometer to understand how people are reacting to everything that is happening. So I'm very hopeful with these municipal and local elections, not only in São Paulo. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. We don't have any very good. We don't have anything similar to Paulo's happening there at the moment. So we're still in the logic of the least evil. So it's really bad. But I see some candidates growing, and even the PSOL candidate is growing. So for the local parliament, I don't know, state council it would be. You can see growing of the radical left taking some part of it. So it's interesting to see, and it's important to gain maybe some momentum from that, and then work on something for 2 years from now. Try, have to be hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah, there is loads of conversations about uniting the left as well in São Paulo and in Rio de Janeiro, with Rio de Janeiro with Benedita da Silva and São Paulo with Bolos. But in São Paulo, it wouldn't be that relevant because the candidate from the Workers' Party, it's like really not, it's insignificant, his votes. And there is also this thing, would help or not? Because as Rodrigo said, the polarization between like who likes PT and who doesn't, it's so massive that at the moment you don't know if it's a good or a bad thing to have the like this kind of things.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Yeah, would it actually help or would it hurt them to be associated with PT? That's an interesting point. And yeah, there's this thing
This
like
is a
PT
kind of
stem and all this like this. Sorry, excuse me.
yeah. No, I was interrupting you. No,
But at the same time, sorry.
It's interesting to see that Benedita is growing in Rio, and she's from PT. So she has chances to go to the second turn now. So it's interesting to see that people are that there is these hate, these version. I don't know. People hate PT, and it's a demonization of PT. But Benedita is growing there, and with chances to go to the second turn. So yeah, that would be good if she went. That would mean that we would have some hope to take the two right-wing ones that are going to the second turn. One is supported by Bolsonaro, and the other is a former mayor that is very liberal as well. So yeah, I'm hopeful with these elections, and I want to see how societies and it's very different as well, as Juliana was saying. There is this thing with the difference in São Paulo and Rio, but Brazil, it's a huge country, and it would be different in every state. So yeah, it's important. The local elections is good because you can kind of get an idea everywhere locally, you know.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And leading on from that question quite nicely, actually, and I think this might be the last question we have in the Q&A, so you can rest, take it easy after this one. But Carlos with Brazilian characteristics, which is a great name, asks, last question please, does the Brazilian Left Front think that if Brazil elects many left-wing politicians, the army will try another coup? So do we see a coup happening again at some point? What do we think?
I don't think I don't think there is this need to do an army coup in Brazil at the moment, even though the left gets to power. I really think that the electoral, the institutional, the political institutional system, it's made in a way that you cannot do anything that radical.
Yeah.
And as you can see, the coup against Dilma was all done in inside the democratic institutions that I ask myself if there is a need for it to
Mm.
be done, what would be outside of the liberal democratic framework. If there is a need, they would do. I'm not that sure there is at the moment.
Mm. Mm. Really interesting take. Rodrigo, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, it's complicated. Like, how do we, how would I think about it? Because the U.S. Support for the coup in 1964 was fundamental for its execution. So, as Juliana said, today I don't see it happening again. I don't really think that would be so easy to do it. Uh, it's complicated because as the society in Brazil is very polarized and very and there is a big gap in economically, which means in power as well. And I think we can get into a situation of chaos that people will be fight among themselves and that will be very chaotic and and somehow the right will do everything it can to to change the scenario to getting power fully again.
Mm.
But yeah, I wouldn't really put my bets in a new military coup. There are other ways that they can do it institutionally as they did with Dilma,
Mm.
and that's always the case. That's always possible, and then that can happen again. But I don't see a military one.
Mm.
There is process of militarization, for example, the militarization of Amazon forest that everybody's talking about, and in Mourão, the device of Bolsonaro is pretty much in this project of like protecting the Amazon. So something regarding Amazon might be a dispute even now with like global change and this need to have a preservation and still this Mercosur deal, European Union Mercosur deal that aims to sell loads of meat here in the European market. That's happening as well. This the destruction of the Amazon forest, the deforestation, and all this kind of things. So Amazon must be an area of dispute, but we don't think in the terms that happened in '64 or as a military coup.
Brilliant, really interesting analysis there, and very insightful, and a little bit sad. A little bit sad to hear about the state of, I suppose, liberal democracy in Brazil at the moment, and how it allows for these kinds of seizing of power without the necessity for like a military coup or anything like that, as we saw with Dilma and so on and so forth. So thank you very much. That's really interesting, and it's been absolutely brilliant having you both on. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your evening to discuss these important topics with us. Before you go, would you like to let the audience know about any upcoming activity or actions that you're going to be engaging in, or if you'd like to promote some events, some movements, anything at all? Now's your chance to shout from the rooftops. Any advice you have for people? Would anyone like to say anything before we wrap up?
And maybe invite people to get in touch so we can organize these study groups. And if you're interested, and join CATU and get in touch with us to work together in the Latin American working group in CATU. That's that from me. Juliana might have some more.
Brilliant,
Yeah, I
brilliant.
think so. Sending, yeah, contacting, get involved with the chatting about what we can do. I think that's basically what would be good. Yeah, there is some things coming up, but I am not sure. But we'll be discussing this issue of the Mercosur deal further, the impact of this in Brazil, and there is some, yeah, basically this kind of things. But get involved in this cattle group would be very important.
Mm. Brilliant, brilliant. I'll have to put a little link to that in the description box below this video after we finish. I should have put it there beforehand. I don't know why. I should just always have it like permanently there. Join Katu. Join Katu. It's really, really important. And it's a great organization as well. You know, I've been to a couple. They have like educational sessions within Katu as well, which are really useful for your organizing and stuff like that. So so yeah, get involved. It's gonna be really useful. Thank you again so much, Juliana and Rodrigo. It's been absolutely great having the two of you on. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Wednesday evening. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat for sticking around. I hope you all enjoyed this. And yeah, I never know a good way of ending these streams. So, so awkwardly, I'll just say thank you all very much. Love and solidarity and all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you all again soon. Cheers, everyone. Slán go fóill.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.